You usually have a cookie recipe, don't you?
I always have a cookie recipe. I always have a recipe that has something chocolate in it because people really like chocolate things. And then I have a main dish and or either a soup or sort of an hors d'oeuvre type dish. You know, I have 5 in each.
Right, and so you do tailor them to the subject matter of the book,
Yes,
but you must also have to test drive them quite a bit.
Yes, I test drive them quite a bit, and my family doesn't really mind. My son, of course, is very happy with the dessert ones, doing those, and I do. They're very difficult because they have to turn out exactly the same way all the time. When I cook, and I love to cook, I don't really measure if I'm putting together something, but when, you've got to get it all out. And you have to think about, I always put in things that people can use as substitutes if they're on a different kind of a diet.
And you can't just steal them from somebody else's book,
And I can't
right?
just go to Julia and open it up and say, okay, let's do this. In this book, there's a wonderful restaurant in Deer Isle, Maine, which is roughly what Sampere Island is, and it's a small.
Is this in the Red Barn, or?
This is no. This is a new. It's Lily's Cafe, and it's a woman named Kira Alex, and I went in there one day, and something smelled so. I thought, oh, this is like the Martha Stewart moment, where you're supposed to have this to sell your house. I thought any house would sell if you walked in and smelled this. I said, Kira, what is that? She said, they're donut muffins. And she gave me one, warm from the oven. And I said, would you please let me put this recipe in the book, in the next book. So that's in this book because they are just, they are so divine.
Where was it that Rob and I stayed on Deer Isle?
You stayed at Pilgrim's Inn, which was
That's
wonderful.
It.
Yeah.
And they do absolutely tremendous food.
Yeah, that's a wonderful place. Yeah, it's very funny. For a small island, there are a couple of extremely good places to eat.
Right.
Kira's is new. You missed that.
I don't think we saw it. Unfortunately for us, it rained the entire time we were there. So it was, somewhat unhappy experience, which I'd like to repeat. Not the rain.
No, but you
Deer
have to
Island.
come back.
Well, when you got to book 10, you started out, Faith, as a minister's wife and young mom, and she was in Elford and whatever. But all the way through, you had hinted that Faith had
another life,
life, a before-time life, and she had ministers in her family, but she'd never wanted to marry one. She was tired of the church. She has a very enterprising sister, isn't it?
Yes, her sister is the dress for success, the briefcases where your own initials are enough, that's her younger sister, Hope.
So in truth, what you did was you wrote the book that might have preceded the whole thing.
Yeah. But I don't think I couldn't have written that book as a first book. I don't think I was. I don't think I was a good enough writer at that point. We talked a little bit before the show started about the kind of apprenticeship I feel that I did with a wonderful editor, Ruth Cavan, when I was first writing. And The Body in the Big Apple, which was a title suggested by a fan, and
it's a very good title.
I thought it was a wonderful title, is Faith before she's married. She's just started the catering business, and it's the end of the 80s. And I was writing it at the end of the 90s. And there were some interesting parallels and differences. And the research for that book was so much fun. The high-scale Christmas gift that year was portable phone. The big clunky portable phones, that was being touted as, and they were very expensive. So going back, I went back through magazines and newspapers and looked at styles, at fashions, and it was a lot of fun. But not having Faith married and with children, and she does get involved with a man in this book, and it ends up. They end up kind of going their separate ways, but it was just an interesting book to write. It also was interesting because it involves a loosely based on Abby Hoffman, kind of the 60s radical, and pokes what I hope is gentle fun at that whole New York radical chic where you were, the Black Panthers were rubbing elbows with these very wealthy East Siders, and this was considered you had to have you know, Bobby Seale at your dinner party, as well as
Right.
Henry Kissinger. And
Well, I
it
thought
was-
you did it extremely well. Of
Yeah.
course, it's a little spooky to think it was, you know, you're researching and telling a story you're in my lifetime,
yeah,
but not
well,
that far
no,
in the past.
it didn't
And-
seem that long ago to me. That was the thing. Yeah.
But it's amazing how things change
Yes.
so quickly. It's kind of like that Back to the Future or whatever
It
movie.
is, it is.
But I thought it was a wonderful New York book too. I mean,
it was
that
my
made
it was my love letter.
so
to
it was
New York.
almost as
Yeah.
though you'd gone abroad again,
Yeah,
you
it
know,
was.
too.
It really was.
Catherine, we've run out of time, but I did
Oh.
want to ask you really quickly. You have done some short stories?
I have done some short stories. One, The Body in the Redwoods, which is in the Murder, She Wrote series. And then I have a short story out in a new collection that's just out now called it's the Malice Domestic 10 collection. And it's called The Would-Be Widower. It is not a Faith Fairchild short story, but it is about a man who becomes very intrigued with the idea of being a widower, and you know how everyone would bring him the casseroles and the attention he would get, and it's
That's almost like Munchausen syndrome.
well, it is in
It
a way.
is
Yeah,
in a
it
way.
is. It is.
Well, I'm happy to see that you're experimenting with form, and I know you've been
Oh, yeah.
thinking about
Yeah.
writing a standalone. But you know, after 11 books, I'm sure that you feel
Yeah,
now
yeah.
you're a writer and established, and you can try your wings in many
Yeah,
directions.
Yes, and you have been from the very beginning just encouraging me in all directions, and that's for a writer, you are the people we depend on.
Well, thank you. And obviously, as a bookseller, we can't make it without you. So I certainly thank you for coming
Well,
today.
thank you for
It's really been
inviting
fun
me.
to see you again. And I certainly thank all of you for joining us on this episode of the Criminal Calendar.